right, this is going to be discussion of the Jefferson Starship and Starship studio albums. So, just to kind of give you the rundown, this will not include anything live. It will not include any compilations like best of, for example, Jefferson Starship Gold from 1979. It will not include either of the three albums of the reformed Jefferson Starship after 1992, I think it was. So it will not include the 1998 Windows of Heaven. It will not include the 2008 Jefferson Tree of Liberty, and it will not include the 2020 Jefferson Starship LP. Called Mother of the Sun, and it will not include the 2013 Starship studio album Loveless Fascination. I have not listened to either of these. It will also not include anything. This is not a video about Jefferson Airplane, but there will be some context. As you can see, that you're looking at the discography, at least part of the discography of that band. If I had to rank these, I'd go 1, 2, and then I haven't really listened to the rest of them. This is live right there, but there were 8 total, including the 1989 self-titled Comeback album. So we'll start with the 3 Kantner Slick projects that kind of led into Jefferson Starship, again, just to give you some context. And so what the last one that they had before that was the very successful Volunteers from 1969. And it was after 1969 that there started to be some divisions, like Kalkunin and Cassidy formed Hot Tuna, which is still touring today. It was kind of like a side project. They had the 1969 Altamont concert where the Hells Angels, and there was violent. Marty Ballin got knocked out. What else happened? He wasn't on the 1970 tour, and then he officially was out. He quit in 1971. Drummer Spencer Dryden was also kicked out, or he left, depending on who you ask, in 1970. I think it was 1970. In that very same year, you had this album, which I'll show you. Okay, so yeah, this is Blows Against the Empire, the first of 3 solo projects. And a lot of people mistake this because they look at who it's credited to, like Paul Kantner, and even if you look at the seam of this one, let me get a shot there. Paul Kantner, Jefferson Starship. It's even on the label. So a lot of people think that, or they say this counts as a Jefferson Starship album. It doesn't. It was a name that he used. It was the first reference to that name, and then there's actually a song in here called Starship, but it's not a Jefferson Starship album because Kantner says so. And It's just not. It wasn't the official band. And give you a look at some of the personnel there when you had a lot of the same Jefferson Airplane, like Kalkinen, Cassidy, Joey Covington was new, Mickey Hart of Grateful Dead, Graham Nash on there, David Crosby. They had some pretty big names on there. Let's take a look at the back of it. This is one of me Skyte's favorite LPs, which was very surprising to me. Just surprised that anyone would even know about this, much less count it as one of their favorites of all time. What was the song she mentioned? I think it was Hijack, she said. It was great. Okay. Alright, we'll look at the one that followed this one. So the follow-up to that was Sunfighter. This is credited to Paul Kantner, Grace Slick. This is also on the Grunt label, which Blows Against the Empire was on. This belonged to Charlotte, lost in translation. And the girl in the picture is China Kantner, who's the daughter of Kantner and Slick. I don't have the notes on this one, but the personnel on this is a lot the same, very much the same as the one on Blows Against the Empire. It's got Jerry Garcia, it's got Mickey Hart, it's got Cal Conan and Cassidy, it's got Graham Nash, David Crosby. So a lot of the same people. Even Spencer Dryden, who had left Jefferson Airplane, came back to drum on one of these songs. And another one of note is the first appearance of lead guitarist Craig Chaquico, who was then 17 years old, plays lead on Earth Mother. So you'll be hearing that name quite a bit more in the ensuing videos on this. So yeah, this was Sunfighter. This is a German release. I haven't really given this one a good listen, but and there's one more. And this is it. Baron von Tolbooth and the Chrome Nun, 1973. And this was credited to Paul Kantner, Grace Slick, and David Freiberg. So David Freiberg was hired as the replacement to Marty Ballin in Jefferson Airplane. And he was brought in for this project as well, as an extra vocalist. In fact, you're listening to him right now. This is where you see some personnel shifts a little bit. You still got Jerry Garcia and Cassidy, Mickey Hart, but Craig Chaquico, who was mentioned as playing with Sunfighter, takes a more expansive role. He does, I think, a few songs on this one, lead guitar. And you also have another notable, along with Freiberg, Papa John Creech, the electric violinist, who you will see very soon. In addition to that, you have John Barbata, the new drummer, who you will be hearing about shortly as well. Both of them were in the initial formation of the Jefferson Starship a year later. So you can see things kind of coming together for what was going to be the band the next year. This is not a bad LP. Another thing of note on this one is you had the Pointer Sisters actually did backing vocals on a song called Fat. So while these three projects were going on, just so you know, and this is why that Blows Against the Empire, credited to Paul Kantner, Jefferson Starship, doesn't count as a Jefferson Starship album because Jefferson Airplane was still functioning. And so during that time, they actually had a couple albums that came out. 1971, Bark, which came out the same year as Sunfighter. So you had, let's see if there's any. Oh yeah, look at this. So Lawman was one that people know about. When the Earth Moves Again. Wild Turkey. And the second one was one called Long John Silver. Look at that mold. Water damage. Humidor pack. 9 fine blends of fragrant jayweed. You had the and these two were the same personnel. Both of these albums. This was from 1972. Long John Silver was the last Jefferson Airplane album that came out until 1989, which I mentioned earlier in this video. So these two albums are kind of dismissed for the most part, but they both went gold, mainly because of the name, but like critically they didn't do very well. Alright, and so the next part will be, that leads us into the formation of Jefferson Starship. So again, it will not be the live albums, it will not be the newer albums that I mentioned, it will not be compilations, it will cover the Jefferson Starship albums from the year 1974 to 1989. So we'll be looking at 11 different LPs, and then at the end I will rank them all. So see you for that.